Hey, welcome back to another exciting episode of YOMO, a year of magical learning. Today we're on episode 124 and we want to discuss about drugs. So, let Chris tell you why.
Yes, this is all about drugs today. The book that we're going to be talking about is a book called 10 Drugs, How Plants, Powders, and Pills Have Shaped the History of Modern Medicine by the author Thomas Hager. Thomas Hager is, I think we've already covered two of his other books, The Alchemy of Air and, what was the other one? The one about
cover Alchemy of Air? I don't remember that one.
I think that was like one of the number 10 or something like that, or like 15 or something along those lines.
Yeah, I remember him. I remember his picture.
Yeah, well, we did another one too. It's the one about not the fertilizer, which is about the alchemy of air. It's the one about, I'm spacing right now. I think I've read maybe 3 or 4 of Thomas Hager's books. I actually really like him. He makes a very provocative, you learn a lot with it, but you actually, it's like tangible learning. It's usually all medical based, drug based. Oh, the first antibiotics. The Demon Under the Microscope and The Alchemy of Air. Those are his other 2 books. They're both really, really good. He wraps like these really cool stories about innovation and medicine and how things came about. Like he goes in depth onto that particular story. So it's like a really great story that he tells. And it's pretty entertaining.
So basically this book is a combination of the Alchemy of Air and the Demon Under the Microscope and plus 8 other ones.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. It's like a shorter condensed version of each one of these stories. So it talks about like how opioids first started or how, antibiotics, like, kind of like the Demon Under the Microscope, or talks about monoclonal antibodies, like newer stuff, Viagra, statins. He goes through like just a bunch of different drugs and the stories of how they were discovered and how they were, how they've shaped lives. And it's not all necessarily drugs, because he does talk a little bit about just like vaccines and how they first came up and stuff like that. So it's kind of like in general drug class, like, sometimes it's not necessarily a specific drug. It was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. So onto the reflection, I would actually highly recommend this book. I had my dad loves books like, this kind of stuff as well. So my dad was looking for a recommendation one day, and I told him about this one, and he won't stop talking to me about it. He's like, oh man, we were out on the golf course the other day, and he was brought up this multiple times about, you remember how in the 10 drugs, like blah, 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 blah. And it was a fun conversation. It was really informative. I learned a lot about the history of opioids, like, which was kind of crazy, like just how we repeat ourselves over and over again with that particular drug. Did you know that Bayer invented heroin? Bayer aspirin, like they invented heroin. Like I had no idea. Like Bayer invented heroin. I mean, it was a drug that they released, and it was kind of a flop, and they were like, whatever.
Isn't it a flop? Because heroin was used widely back in the days. For like the soldiers and whatnot.
It was pretty much a flop in general. Overall, it didn't accomplish for whatever reason, it didn't achieve the commercial success they were hoping to achieve. So they just kind of gave up on it. But, obviously we all know what heroin is today. But, Bayer invented heroin. It's stories like that, where you're like, holy shit, it blows your mind how many times throughout history that we've repeated ourselves over and over again, especially with opioids, where we keep trying to find a way to make them safe and non-addictive.
Well, and it doesn't you have some benefits and there is some side effects, and you can't let go of it. And so you try to say, well, I wonder if I can take away the negative effect, so they can continue to experiment and whatnot. To me, it's one of those things where the benefit is too good to let go.
Oh, for sure. I'm not saying opioids are like the scourge of the world. It's how we use them and how we keep trying to think that they can be regularly used. Opioids are intended to be used for like my daughter's situation, where she was getting a morphine drip and a fentanyl doses because she was in a lot of pain, and that's when you use those kind of things. And we're going to talk actually, I finished a book called Dreamland a couple months ago, and it was all about the opioid epidemic here in the United States. We can get way more into opioids in the future and kind of how that all came about. This book was really interesting. I learned a lot. Another interesting tidbit was vaccines were first discovered. It seems like they were discovered in England, but they really weren't. Actually, were discovered by this lady who took a trip to the Middle East, and everybody had smallpox, and in England and Europe, you would see smallpox on people's faces, the scars, if you survived. And she went over there, and she didn't see that with any of the women or any of the kids over in the Middle East country that she was touring and visiting for some weird reason. And she saw them like scratching their like a needle, and the kids would get sick for like a day. And she was like, what are you guys doing? She was like, well, this is how we, this is why we don't have smallpox. And she was like, that's crazy, and so she brought it back to the UK. Nobody would listen to her, and finally through a couple of people doing random testings and things like that, it bubbled up and it became more accepted. And then that's how the first vaccines were commercially invented, I guess, in general, which was fascinating as well. I didn't know that. So anyway, enough about what we learned in 10 Drugs. It was a good book. It was something I would recommend for people to check. On to the reflection for the day. The reflection title for this one was, there are no quick fixes to live in a balanced life. I'm going to start this reflection by talking a little bit about modern medicine is incredible. Just to be crystal clear, it is unreal. I've seen it in action many a times. My children would not be here. Either one of them would not be here without modern medicine, and how it can, in an emergency situation, it's pretty brilliant. Some of the stuff that we can do and what we've learned. And especially these doctors and nurses, I will be forever in their debt for what they did and their knowledge and all the studying and things like that have gone on through the course of human history to be able to get us to the point in time where my children can have a chance at life through understanding drugs and how they interact with the body and how they can counteract things in an emergency situation. I talked about it in my book. I can't imagine the first time that Amelia had her big surgery, her blood pressure dropped pretty dramatically. Nobody panicked, right? They all just huddled up. Amelia was in a lot of trouble physically, and I didn't know what was going on. I'm just sitting over in the corner of the room and freaking out. Her sats on her monitors are all out of whack. I mean, it's a really scary moment, in general. After her surgery, her blood pressure was dropping pretty dramatically, which, like, you don't want lower blood pressure. Like, I mean, low blood pressure, we all ask for it, but like when it goes low,
blood pressure,
like, that's
or high
bad.
blood pressure. You don't
Right.
want neither. You gotta have to
You
balance.
want balanced blood pressure. Yeah, exactly. Amelia was having her body was fighting off the surgery and the trauma from the surgery, and her blood pressure was dropping, which was shutting down her organs, which then can cascade effect of a lot of other different things start to happen when that happens, right? So the doctors and nurses like all huddled up, and I'm over there like basically shitting my pants, watching this. I was by myself because we couldn't have two parents, at the hospital at the time because of COVID. And I'm just sitting there in the corner of this room and like just like going, what are we doing? They just calmly huddled up, talked about what they needed, or called down to the pharmacy. 20 minutes later, the drugs arrived. Our nurse, she is incredible. She just went to work, man, like restringing lines all over the place and different drugs and yada yada yada. And within 2 hours later, Amelia was back to a stable state, and we were in a good spot. And I mean, I can't tell you how like intense those moments were. But like knowing what to do with dopamine, which is what the drug they ended up using, epinephrine, if you needed to do that. I mean, Amelia at one point in time was on epinephrine, or, all these other, I mean, there was morphine, fentanyl, whatever. I mean, there was a million different things that Amelia was on at various stages of her time. And,
right.
And especially in the last couple, days of her life, that was when the opioids were most impactful for our family. I could visibly see whenever she would need it, and then as soon as we would administer a dose, that she needed it in our last couple of days, like she was at peace, she was calm. I could see the pain would go away from her, and gave me a bit of relief just watching her life, and we could have a little bit more time with her and figure things out. Anyway, I say all this to say, like, modern medicine is truly incredible. Now, fast forward to, you see all these like TV commercials all the time. I feel like I was asking Felicia this the other day. When you turn on the TV these days, like, I'll ask you the same question. What percentage of commercials do you think are pharmaceutical related commercials?
I would say at least 60-80%.
I feel like there's a drug for everything.
You constantly see them everywhere.
All day. That's pretty much like the majority of our advertising that happens on, at least on television, is drugs, right? I mean, and it's drugs for this. The funniest one that I've always seen, I can't remember the name of the drug, but it's about opioid induced constipation. So like, you take your opioid, but too much opioids will make you constipated. So now we have this other drug to counteract that drug because you're addicted to opioids and you shouldn't be taking, anyway.
It's a vicious cycle that never ends.
It's a vicious cycle that never ends, right? So like, I say all this to illustrate the fact of drugs are important. And I'm not shitting on drugs and medicine in general. In an emergency situation, it's incredible. I mean, it's saved, I can't even imagine how many lives, millions upon millions of human lives have been saved through vaccines, through, opioids, through whatever, or pain has been lessened, at the most crucial stages of life. However, that said, like, the book made me really think about, like, man, we spend so much time like trying to medicate our problems that are not emergency situations. These are problems that you need to like do what we talk about all the time, which is like dig deep, understand the underlying root cause of these things. You are
Mhm.
never going to get a quick fix from some drug that's going to solve a long-term problem that isn't an emergency situation. Like that's not how humanity, that's not how life works. Like I don't care if you have anxiety, if you have fear, if you're happy, if you're overweight, if you're underweight, if you're in pain, whatever, like there's just no way that a pill will ever solve those problems. It can lessen it in an emergency situation, but that is never a long-term solution, in my personal opinion, with the pharmaceutical industry and statins and all these other things that they pitch you, you should be on for forever. And really it comes down to living a balanced life. I mean, this is what we talk about all the time. This is what Clubany is based on. This is what we care about. This is why we do what we do. If something is off balance in your life or your health, you can't just take a pill and make it magically go away. You got to go do the work. You got to go figure out what is important to your life, go figure out how to go change that and put in the work and the time and listening to it. Because that's how the universe works, is on harmony and balance, right? Like it doesn't work on a pill all the time to counteract something else, because you have no idea what other cascading downstream effects that are going to happen by doing those things long term if you don't address what's actually going on. So that was what this book really made me think about, is it's like, there's no quick fixes to life. Like there's no quick fixes to living a balanced life. That is the title of this. And you got to put in the time and you got to do the work. Like, I mean, that point blank period. Right. So I'll pause there. The question I asked was, what crutches do you lean on for quick fixes to your problems? What would life look like without them? Something to think about, but I know you probably have a lot of comments on this one. So I'll pause there and love to get your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I could not agree more, just because it's exactly how I feel. It reminds me of the concept of teaching a man how to fish versus fishing for him, because, sometimes when you fish for him, he doesn't learn.
Right.
And same thing with medicine. When we take medicine, the medicine is doing the job of the bodies, and the body doesn't adjust. And so it's not a long-term solution, but it is a intervention. So if you imagine a guy who doesn't know how to fish, but he's too weak because he's too hungry, he cannot fish. So he relies on the fisherman to fish one fish for him, to give him the fish to eat, to gain his strength. And then after that, he needs to learn how to fish. He cannot continue to rely on the other fishermen trying to give him the fish all day long. Same thing with the body. Your body they need to do its work. You cannot let the medication do the work for you. And so I cannot emphasize how much I agree with your, I guess, your mindset on medications. Medications is only used for interventions, and it's great,
emergencies,
amazing for interventions, but it's not long-term. And I have not ever seen a single case where a long-term drug is effective.
I agree. Can you think of anything that may be a long-term drug that's been effective? Anything?
No, I have thought about it because I have the same problem, right? And so I even personally have experienced the fact of medications long-term does not work. It's the negative effect of the compound effect. Okay, whatever you do, it compounds at the end, and it's a hefty price. It's one of these things where we're talking about the quadrant, right? The important but not urgent things. That's what you got to work on. You have to make sure that you are making the important but not urgent use in the medications to let and avoid putting the medications in that quadrant, basically. So we're going back to the 7 habits of highly effective people. We're talking about the 4 quadrants of urgent and important and urgent, not important. Okay, we want to focus on long term, because long term the compound effects kicks in, and the medications, just like I told you about the fisherman, right? Imagine if you are a person who don't have enough energy to go fish for yourself. You need that kick, right? You need that kick to get yourself some energy. But after that, you cannot continue to rely on somebody giving you the fish, because you would never learn how to fish yourself. And one of these days, you don't have the guy there to fish for you, or he fish for someone else. So you're gonna starve to death in the end. So the thing is, that's, to me, it's a concept of nothing worthwhile is going to have shortcuts. It just isn't. And so your reflections about, there's no quick fixes. There's no quick fixes for the living a balanced life. Living a balanced life is a long-term goal. It's a long-term endeavor. And anything long-term, there is no quick fix for us. There's intervention, but intervention is only for short-term. It is for you to bridge something, for you to so for example, we get a loan for a house, right? Because there's no way we can afford a house, so we get a loan for a house. But eventually, you have a house, you need to build up the equity, and so from there, you need to use that equity to do whatever things you want to do and build up your net worth. But imagine that there is no like these quick fixes in the short term for the Americans, right? We'll be like the third world country where you're always poor. You cannot leverage anything. You talk about capitalism, right? Capitalism is one thing that a lot of people misunderstood, just because, you're talking about if America has skyscrapers, right? There is not a single person in America before all these capitalism comes about can build a skyscraper on his own. It has to be a collective of everybody else. And that's the borrowing the credit and all that. That's the collective effort put into one that allows you to step. It's a stepping stone to jump onto the next step. And so there are uses for the quick fixes. There are uses for the medications and medicine we have today. There are uses for opioid. There are uses for heroin. There are uses for morphine. There's uses for a lot of stuff. It's just that we're using it the wrong way. And medications is one of those things where it only applies to short terms. Anything that's long term needs to have, you need to learn how to do it. You need to know how to do it yourself. And so
you have to. Like
there's no other way.
So actually, I'll go over to my dad. So my dad has had, my family, high cholesterol runs in my family for whatever reason. I don't know why. My grandparents have had it. My great grandparents have had it. My dad has high cholesterol. So for my entire life that I've known, like my dad's been on statins, like Lipitor or whatever. He had a heart attack when he was, I was like 22, so it was like 16 years ago. So he was probably like 50. He had a heart attack. It was a pretty minor heart attack, I guess. I don't really know how that is defined, but it seemed like everything was okay. But it was a wake-up call for him. So he just recently retired, as we had talked about a year ago now. He's been retired for about a year. We were out golfing on Sunday when he was telling me all about 10 drugs and stuff that he learned, and we were having a good conversation. Ever since he's been retired, he's put a really big focus on his health and wellness, and he goes to the gym regularly, multiple times. His idea of going to the gym before he retired was, I'll go once a week and I'll go push myself to the limit, and my body will hurt the rest of the week, and then I'll feel like that was workout, right? Now he goes pretty much every day, or he takes long walks around the neighborhood, or at least something to get his body moving every single day. And then he went on a pretty strict diet where he was portion control, making sure that he only ate certain types of foods, because he actually got diagnosed with diabetes 4 or 5 years ago, which he's not overweight and he doesn't seem unhealthy, but for some weird reason, his blood sugar was spiking regularly and he was confirmed as a diabetic. His A1C was high enough where he was technically a diabetic, and he was put on drugs that he had to take. And he's, after this diet that he's been on for the past 7 months, we were golfing the other day and he goes, "Hey, how much do you weigh?" And I go, "Why?" He goes, "How much do you weigh?" And I told him how much I weigh, and he goes, "Huh, okay. Well, I'm down to we're not big people, so I weigh like 133 pounds." And my dad's like, "Well, I'm down to like 160. He's like, I thought I was looking closer to your size, So, but either way, he was like, I'm feeling great. He goes, "I went to the doctor the other day." He goes, "Check this out." He goes, "I've been going to the gym, eating right." Because every time I go over there, my mom's like cooking, like my mom's always cooked really healthy meals, but she's been specifically portion controlling all their meals, to follow along with this particular diet. So if they have like salmon for dinner, we only get like 2 ounces of salmon. She's like very hardcore making sure that he's eating the right way, and he's trying to make sure that he's following the right diet. Anyways, he's talking to me and he goes, "Hey, so I went to the doctor the other day. Guess what?" And I go, "What?" He goes, "I'm not diabetic anymore. I'm off of statins. I'm off of all those drugs. I never want to take any drug ever again for the rest of my life. This is stupid. I've been taking statins for 30 plus years in my life." And he was like, I'm tired of putting this shit in my body." And he was like, "I feel great." He was like, but the point where I'm getting at is he's the perfect example of what we're talking about. Like his doctor prescribed him statins, since he was probably like 30 years old, to combat high blood pressure. And he didn't live a sustainable, healthy, balanced lifestyle his entire life, and it resulted in a heart attack, then they give him more drugs and they tell you to do more stuff. And he goes to the doctor and then he's diabetic and they give him more drugs. Shocker, after only 8 months of putting in the hard work of eating right, living a balanced diet and exercising regularly, he's no longer in any risk category and he doesn't have to take these drugs anymore. It's not rocket science, but it takes hard work. And it also feels better. He feels better.
But
You
the
can
thing
see
is
he had
that
more energy.
the point is that it gets you results.
Mhm.
You're taking the drug, you still have high blood pressure, you still have diabetes. He didn't have diabetes before. He's taking the statin. It makes him become diabetic.
Is that what it does?
It actually creates diseases, symptoms. Yes. That's the
Shit.
thing
Well,
is, so on my side, right, I've been taking diabetic medication for 20 years.
I didn't
Since
know
I was
that. I know you
23.
said you were diabetic, but I didn't know you've been taking it for that long. Yeah.
I got diagnosed when I was 23, very young. I wasn't obese at all. I was skinny and I was
Right.
diabetic. Okay. I've taken the drugs for 20 years and the blood sugar level is always erratic. It jumps up and down. And
Right.
A1C was, you can't even say under control, but it gets worse and worse every year. It gets worse and worse and the number gets higher and higher. And the doctors, would actually, increases the dosage more and more, eventually to the point where I'm taking these medications, like a lot of these, and my sugar level is still like maximum, like 300, 400 easily without doing anything. It gets to the point where my eyes become blurry because I'm basically losing my eyesight. And so that's when I got a wake up call, said, this medication is actually killing me.
Right.
And for me, I actually quit taking medication cold turkey because it's making me, because when I have diabetes, it raises my cholesterol.
Did it really? I didn't know that. Yeah.
Right. So I have diabetes, I have high blood pressure, I have cholesterol, I have a bunch of other things. So I'm taking diabetic medications, I'm taking statin, I'm taking some others, lisononitrile or something like that for high blood pressure and all that. So it actually causes more problems.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, when I was diabetic, it looks like I have been, like my body has been beating to a pulp. It's like it's inflamed, right? Your face,
Right.
it's inflamed. You're not fat, but it's your body is being inflamed because of all these drugs that's getting to the between your muscle cells and all that. It doesn't work. The only thing it does, it makes it worse. And
Right.
that's the key lessons here is it doesn't solve the problem. It never did.
Never
And
solves.
it never will, right?
Never.
That's the key lesson for you, for your dad, and for me. That's a lesson. It does not solve your problem. It only holds it back.
Right.
For a short term. And that causes people to take it for granted and say, because I took diabetic medications,
It's gonna fix
my
my
sugar
problem.
went down.
Yeah.
Oh, I should continue to take it. And that's not how it should be working. It's to say, okay, now that I have this brace on, right, these crutches.
Right.
Imagine you broke your leg, right? You need the crutches for 6 months, but you need to work on that leg so that it can be without the crutches. And that should be the goal, not to say, hey, I'm going to use the crutches from now on out.
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
to
Yeah.
me, that was a mistake I made. Right. And I have regret that mistake. It's not for you to take it and continue to move forward with it. If you're on crutches, your job would be to use crutches to help you strengthen the broken leg and let it heal and let it becomes, adjusted to and some more support and getting stronger every day. That's the way you should transition. It's like a bridge. You're supposed to use it as a bridge, not for everything. And the medications and medicine that we have today, like I say, it's amazing. It's super amazing and it saves countless lives. But that's the thing is people are using the wrong way. I mean, we're talking about heroin, you're talking about opioid, right? People say, oh, this is bad. Are you talking about like the steroids, for example? You see people
Right.
using steroids for the
Long
sports
period of
and
time.
Olympic and all that, right? But the thing is, the drug isn't the bad thing. Is that how
No.
you use it was bad. You
Right.
use it
Right.
in the wrong context. And so imagine that, because I'm sure Amelia had steroids injected into her body.
Oh yeah.
Came out,
Yeah.
right. So to me,
dexamethasone, that was the big one for her lungs to try to get her off the ventilator. That we only got to do it one time. Anyway, yeah.
usage for steroids, using it in
Right.
the right way. And so it's a good thing. But if you use it in a bad thing, it will become bad. And that's something that we need to realize and learn. My pet peeve for this thing in itself is how the pharmaceutical is portraying it. I love the
Marketing.
way that we invented medicine and we are using it for intervention and we were saving a lot of lives. It's just how the pharmaceutical companies are spinning it to make it look like, hey, this is what you need to accompany you on your journey. It is not.
That's the whole story of OxyContin, basically. You know, the book that I was telling you that I read, Dreamland, which is a really good book. If you have any desire to want to learn about how the opioid epidemic kind of came about in the country, like and how we got to where we got to today, where it's this crisis where people are literally just dying in the streets, and you have to get naloxone, you have to get all these other things to go revive the dead, you know, and people carrying around like, you know, anyway.
The pharmaceutical companies?
Oh, the pharmaceutical companies. So Purdue Pharma, there was this guy in the 70s that he did like, it wasn't a clinical study. It was not anything. He did a quick research of like 100 patients at a certain New England hospital where they monitored the use of opioids in the hospital and whether or not it led to addictive behavior beyond the hospital when they took it away after the hospital setting of use. And he found there was no statistical showing that if you weren't already addicted to opioids or something along those lines before you came into the hospital, that using opioids in the hospital when you needed to use it led to a continued prolonged opioid addiction. So he wrote this like little note, penned it, sent it off to the New England Journal of Medicine or whatever the hell it was, as like just like an editor's note for something. Somehow this got published in like a little handwritten blurb or whatever from this guy. And then Purdue Pharma found it like a decade later when they were making OxyContin, and they used that little blurb as clinical definition of studies that said opioid use is not shown to be addictive. So then they would go to these doctors and they would say like, look, and then the whole pain industry started to say like, and all the medical professions started to say, hey, pain is like a fifth marker that we need to be monitoring for people, which I don't disagree. Like you should monitor people's pain levels when they're in an acute setting and they're in an intervention setting. But then they started monitoring pain going forward, I guess. And then they said, look, pain is now one of those things that we're monitoring. Purdue Pharma and this New England Journal of Medicine is saying that it's not addictive. They created the time release capsule of OxyContin. And then boom, you know, like that was how they were like, you should just prescribe this long-term to your patients. Like, and doctors were like, okay, maybe it is okay. You know, maybe it's not addictive. Like Purdue's saying it's not addictive. This guy's saying it's not addictive. Right. Like, you know, before you know it, you have what we have today. It is addictive. Lo and behold, like it doesn't solve people's long-term problems. Like, and it never will, ever. Like, I don't care what somebody comes up with from like an opioid perspective. Like it will never be something you can take every single day that will not become addictive. It's to be an interventionist style drug to take away pain in an acute setting. That is its job. Like that is the purpose of opioids, and they do their purpose. I mean,
everything has purpose,
right?
And if you treat the system, the compound effect will catch up to you, and that's what happened. You know, if somebody just wants to lie a little bit. And
it wasn't a lie. I mean, but
they cheated. They didn't do the studies. They just say, hey, you know, somebody say something, we're going to use it. And so they knew the little oops, right. And they continued to let it go. And that creates the compound effect. It dominoes throughout the layers of whatever those things that cascade, right? It creates something much bigger than what it originally was. And so that's the power of compound effects. Right. And so you think about if you broke your leg and you have a cast put on your leg from the toe to the hip, right? As a cast, what's the purpose of a cast?
I mean, it's to keep you stable.
Right? But what happens if you keep the cast forever?
I mean, your leg would atrophy and your muscles would, I mean, you wouldn't be able to move.
Exactly.
I mean,
that's my point, because you think about the cast as the medications, as a medicine, it's not supposed to last long term.
Right.
Not to say that the cast is bad, but the cast is good for short term because it allows your legs to heal and it prevents you re-injuring your leg and make it worse, right? But for short term, it's good. But for long term, it's bad because your leg becomes atrophy and becomes like a skeleton. There's nothing in it. You won't put it move your leg. Even like after 2 years, take out the cast, right? You wouldn't be able to use your leg. Imagine you do it for 20 years. Imagine putting a cast for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years,
I mean,
what do you think happens to your leg?
I don't even know if it would still be around. It probably
No,
decayed
I
and fallen
guarantee
off.
not be able to use your leg at all after a
Right.
year. Most casts are about 3 months, 6 months. I mean, a year is when you have something like you couldn't heal that. Whenever you did it, you couldn't heal that quick, or you have so severe. But because the longer you kept your cast in it, the harder it is for you to do the physical therapy to get it back to normal.
Yeah.
Because I broke both my arms and I had some cast, right? And it was it didn't last for like 3 months. But when the cast was broken, my hand was like completely frozen. It won't move at all. And you have to like physically do therapy to get it back to normal. And that's like 3 months, 6 months, something like that. Imagine you did 4 years.
If you don't use it,
I mean, I basically lose it. You don't use
yeah,
it.
yeah. I mean, it's true. I mean, we've talked about this many times.
So you think about the medication. Let's say statin, right? Statin's supposed to keep cholesterol in check. But because you have the medication that does its job, that means that the functions of the cell or the organs in the body is not doing that job anymore. You're taking a rest, but then you won't let them go back to work. Well, eventually you fire. In essence, you fired the organ's functions, and it goes away. And then suddenly right? What do you think is going to happen? You're supposed to only give it a rest until the organs can recuperate and get back to work. And that's what you're supposed to do. When you broke your leg, you're supposed to put it in a cast and let it heal and then get it back to work. Same thing with medications. You're supposed to use it as a bridge for the next phase. You cannot continue to use it because your organs or whatever functions as we're doing it no longer functions. So
I mean, this isn't how the universe works. Like, there is no pill to make your life happy or less anxious, or make you more loving, or make you more like it just takes hard work. I mean, like, especially like the mental drugs.
Technically, whatever was worthwhile needs to have the ingredient of time.
Like, we want to, actually, one of the things that I hear a lot from like celebrities these days is like microdosing on like mushrooms and, or doing ayahuasca or something like that, how it changed their perspective and yada, yada, yada. The truth is what you and I have been doing for the past 2.5 years or whatever it is. We've been basically doing mushrooms and ayahuasca or whatever. We've been doing it organically. We've been doing it sustainably. We don't need to just go to some shaman where we puke in a bucket for 4 hours or whatever.
You can't absorb every single thing you have there, because let's say you took some mushroom, right? And you have this like open connections to your neurons, and there's a bunch of input that you never seen before. How much of those experience and the input that you can process and retain? It needs time to process, but you and I do this thing. Yes, it's like, okay, we did it in 2 years instead of doing it in 1 or 2 settings, but we are absorbing the data and input that comes into our brains, and we are taking it and we're processing it, right? And so we're processing it a small chunk at a time, but eventually, because of time, it compresses, it becomes big. But a person go take these mushrooms and whatever kind of drug. So there is some usage, but it's only to ascertain, because if you open floodgate, right? How much of the water can you drink?
Not that much. That's why it's so overwhelming of an experience. And not to your point, like I think there is some value to it for sure.
There is,
because it can open you up to the possibility that there is there is other things that you can broaden the connectedness of the universe, and all these other things that get outside of where you're at today. Like, I get it for that perspective, but then to do it like all the time, and to think that's the only time you can ever be
to understand what experience you should be getting, try to do that organically, right? Know what it is they're looking for, and then work towards finding a way to get there.
Exactly.
Because you can't just say, hey, I took this mushroom, I want to take it again. You only take it once. That's all you need.
Right.
Because you just need to know what are you looking for, and then you gotta figure out, okay, how do I get back that experience? Mm-hmm. Because you can I continue to use it? Because if you, like I said, go back to my analogy, if you broke your leg, you can't use a cast. The cast is there. You need it. You need to know
your brain's there, the mental connections, the neurons, that imagination is there. It exists. Like it always exists. It will always be there. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? Like we said, your imagination is no different. Like your creativity is no different. You're right. If you don't use it, you lose it. Do you remember that line from the 40-year-old virgin? When he takes his girlfriend's daughter to the gynecologist or something like that, and she was getting some drug, for whatever reason, he decided he would take her, and when she was asking some questions, he started asking his own questions about sexual health and wellness or whatever. And he was like, is it true if you don't use it, you lose it? Just like, I think our points are, I'm glad that I'm learning this at this stage of my life as well. It's overwhelming to get inundated by pop culture, by marketing, by television, by, all these big businesses to just beat you over the head that, like, hey, there's a drug for that. Hey, there's something you could do for that. Hey, you want to be happy? Go take ayahuasca. Hey, you want to be, whatever, go do this. Hey, you want to be
there's sleeping
not
pills,
have diabetes.
there's mood pills, there's like diet pills, there's all sorts of stuff. And that's, to me, it's so much noise from the media and the pharmaceutical companies that it's hard for anyone not to be influenced. The only way for us to defend it is to know, is to learn the lessons from the people who have went through the hard way. Like,
to live a balanced existence, is to do what we're trying to do for people in company. Is to help people to live that life. But
it's one other way we know.
It's one of the ways that we know how to not have to depend on pharmaceuticals in order to live the lives that we want to live.
This is why we have this year of magical learning, because these are the kind of things that we don't talk about. And because we don't talk about, we don't know about it. And so we easily can be persuaded by the media, by the big pockets pharmaceutical company that wants more profits. And so without these stories and discussions and the lessons that we learn from them, we may be privy to becoming victims of these confusions.
Yeah.
Right? It confuses you so that you don't know what's right, what's wrong, until you follow the advice. And, what is the goal of the pharmaceutical companies?
I actually think that this is the funny part about it all, is I don't think that any sales rep that worked at Purdue Pharma that was selling OxyContin was like, yeah, I'm a drug dealer and I'm getting people hooked on opioids. Like, I think that they thought they were trying to help people, because I think they don't want people to have pain.
Right? But somebody up top.
I still think that they were mission driven and they were trying to help the Sadler family, or whatever the family was that owned Purdue Pharma. They've donated an insane amount of money to, like, NYU and their medical school and other places. These guys were incredibly important people in the medical community in general. And to think that they had some malicious intent behind them.
This goes back to what I said about let my people go surfing. I feel the same way, because you saying I want to do good, less bad, less evil.
Right.
Right. So that means that you should praise me.
Yeah.
It's like, Chris, I only punch you once. I could have punched you 10 times, but I only punch you once. You should appreciate and praise me for being a good guy. That's how I feel. And to me, to say I donated this, but at the same time, even now, there's a lot of things that comes about. If we can get away with it, we would.
Right.
If you are, then you stop. Why are you still doing it? If you're still doing it, that means, hey, I only punch you once. You should praise me as this gracious, generous guy, and grovel before me, put me on a pedestal. And that's how I feel. I don't know. That's you.
I can't disagree with you at all. Like, when we talked about Patagonia, how they want to be sustainable, clothing.
You want to be sustainable? Stop doing it. Stop doing it. Less harm.
You know how you can do less harm?
But the point is still punching somebody in the face.
Right.
Right. Say, I only punch you once. Therefore, I'm the good guy.
I hesitate to shit on other people's purposes in life if they feel like they're purpose driven. If Yvon Chouinard feels like this is his purpose,
I'm fine. You do. Don't preach.
Right.
If you say I'm making money and because I could,
right,
I probably
then okay.
Yeah. But the problem I have with is you telling me you're a good guy, but then you punch me in the face. say, look, I'm a bad guy. I punch you in the face. Take it. But he said, I'm a good guy. I punch you in the face. I only punch you once. To me, that's what I have a problem with. Don't declare something that you're not. Right? You get it. I don't care if you say, well, this is how I make money. So this is some harm to the environment, label me as whatever you want to label me. I mean, I accept the consequences of my actions. The thing is, in this world, you will always be responsible for your actions. One way or another, you will be responsible for your actions. You cannot say, okay, you label me as something else just because, right? You can't fool me into thinking you're a good guy when you say, hi, I'm doing less harm to the environment. The problem is you still doing harm to the environment. So you can't say that I'm a good guy or I'm whatever.
I mean, this might be a dumb take, but Jerry Sandusky, the Penn State football coach, I mean, for 35 years of his life, it looked like he was helping to set youth up for a better life. And then obviously
because
you find
that disgusts me, right? If you are a bad person, don't go out there and fool people into thinking that you're a good guy. To me, the biggest sin is to lie to people, because you said, you come out and say, I'm a good person, I'm a great person, I am helping the youth, right? But you're using that as a scapegoat for you to do the evil things in the back. To me,
that's the real purpose,
is abhorrent. This is the worst thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say if you're some kind of bad guy and you do it and you label that, because at least you own up to your actions.
At least drug dealers that are dealing heroin on the street, they know what they're doing. I don't think that any of them go around saying, hey, I'm just trying to ease pain. No, they're like, no, I'm trying to make some money to feed my family. And I get it that I'm making people addicted and they're living awful lives.
If Yvonne Sharna had never wrote the book, I would have respected him. But he wrote the book telling people that, follow my actions. This is what you should do. To me, that puts me off.
Not agree more with you.
He would have documented and said, this is what I did. I'm not proud of it, but this is what I did. Okay.
Right.
If you think you want to follow, that's fine. It's up to you. Right. If you don't, that's fine. But don't go out there and say, oh, this is where you're supposed to be acting. And everybody's on the community say, oh, the Patagonia is environmentally friendly. We should take them as a role model. I mean, to me, that's a bunch of BS. Right? You are causing the generations. This is go back to what I think about a pharma. It's like you spin this angle of drugs as the companion for your life. You should take it forever because you are exploiting its purpose for something that is not intended. That's the same thing they did for Patagonia. Better than the pharmaceutical company that spin it to know that, hey, medication, like I said, medication isn't bad, or to do whatever isn't bad. It's what they say that should be how they spin it.
Right. Yeah. I agree. I 100% agree with what you're saying. And honestly, that's what we're trying to not do in Clubany.
Make sure that, because what happened is when you say, well, the pharmaceuticals are bad, right? Don't take your medications. Well, it's not good for you either. If you have a heart attack, you need the medications. If you have high blood pressures and you need it for like today, well, you need to take it. Right. People don't understand. They get confused because, one person took it and
you need clothes. You got to wear clothes.
You got to wear clothes. So it's not that what anyone did, is how you spin it to label you as something else. That's hiding under the ship's skin, like a wolf in ship's clothing. To me, that is the devious aspect of the thing that, to me, it grinds my gears.
Yeah, no, I hear you loud and clear. I mean, I think integrity, that's why I added integrity in my own core values.
Integrity is in my number two. Balance, integrity, right? So for me,
say what you care about and then go do that. If you're not doing that, then you don't care about it. You either care about it or you don't, and you show that through your actions. I call that conscious living. It's a conscious effort to live the way that you say you want to live through your actions every single day that you represent out to the world. Because if you're not, then like you can go to church every single day, but like you said, anyway, we're a little over time today. I think we're beating a dead horse, but great discussion.
The horse already dead. Don't beat it.
We should put a pin on the horse and just let them be. I think that was a great discussion in general, but I would highly recommend people to read this book. I think it's important.
But I think this is an important lesson to learn. Is we have to make sure that we use the inventions we have, the medicines the right way, right?
Right.
It's not that opioid are bad. It's not that medications is bad. It's not that doctors are bad.
Clothes are
right?
bad, you know.
It's not all bad. It's because
Right.
you spin it in a way that it is intended. So you need to make sure that you know what can be applied and what cannot be. Because if you don't apply it, the intervention may have saved you. But if you
Yeah.
continue to take the advice of the pharmaceuticals, right, it's gonna make you worse, and you're gonna have to end up paying a hefty price for the effect, the compound effect that it did on your body.
I could not agree more. I was joking with one of my cousins, just graduated from pharmacy school. So she's finishing, I think she's getting ready to go into her residency or whatever. And I was joking with her. We were at a family get together over the summer. And I was like, oh, so you're officially a drug dealer. Congratulations, you know. And she was like, yep, that's what we do. We, you know, we're drug pushers, you know. And the truth is, it's not much, that's not true. Like there's no difference between my cousin going to school for 7 years to be a pharmacist or whatever she has to go to, and then going through residency, versus some dude that grew up in Jalisco, Mexico, that grew up in the heroin trade and went through that his entire life and understood from farm to table drugs. Like, you can do what I call it. It's still just peddling drugs, you know. Now, like, having the right context is important. So, I mean, if I was ever going to be, I'm not saying that pharmacists are not important. Like, I mean, I'm
right. It's all about context.
They're very important,
right? It's the applications in the context.
When I was 27, I started having panic attacks. I went to my family doctor that had been seeing me since I was 5 years old. I thought I had a heart attack. The first time I had a panic attack, I was freaking out. It was scary as hell. My friends had to drive me home from work, and I just laid on the couch the rest of the day. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was falling apart or something like that. So I go to my doctor the next day, and he goes, he's asking me questions, you know, examining me, and I'm telling him what happened. And he was like, Chris, how's your faith? And I go, it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I was like, what are you talking about, Dr. Lawless? And he was like, do you have a relationship with God? And I go, what does this have to do with, like, I'm dying over here, man. Like, you know, what and he was like, I'm just asking. He's like, it sounds like you had a panic attack. And he was like, it sounds like, you know, maybe you should work through that. He was like, I'm going to prescribe you some Xanax. But he was like, but, you know, I don't think this is the solution. I mean, that's what a good doctor is. Like, that's, I respect the shit out of that. I appreciate that, because he was right. I could be still taking Xanax to this day if you know, and still having panic attacks and be like, well, I just have panic attacks. Well, no, I have panic attacks because I was unhealthy in terms of, like, the way that I was living my life and what I cared about and what I was trying to do and the environment that I was in and all these different factors that I had to go self-explore and discover that for myself to be able to get through that and get past that, right? Xanax is not the solution. If anything, it would have been just awful if I was still taking it for forever. So I really respect my doctor at the end of the day for saying that, because he's right. I didn't have a relationship with God, with faith, with anything. I hadn't sat down and thought and spent time reflecting, writing, reading, like all the things that we care about and all the things that we're doing. I had not put in the work. Like, I did not deserve that drug beyond that the week that he would need to prescribe that in my panicked state that I was in at that point in time. But once that was stabilized, like you said, once the cast was on, like, I needed to do the fucking work. And that's really what everybody needs to do, is do the fucking work, you know, like, yeah.
Yes, it's not supposed to support long term. Yeah,
exactly.
But I think that horse is torn to pieces.
All right. So the question we can leave with everybody is what crutches do you lean on for quick fixes to solve your problems? And what would life look like without them? You know, maybe it's something to think hard about. And if you don't have answers to that, we're happy to, like, talk to you about it and you know, have a deeper conversation as well and see if we can help you guys out. So yeah, we will. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
All right. Well, we'll see you next time, and looking forward to the exciting episode.